Hi guys, I'm Retro Critic here, and today we're going to review the third installment of the Crash Trilogy, and that's Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped. So in this review, we're going to play and talk about Crash Warped. And well, I personally think it's still worth it as a game. And so now, let's jump right ahead. And let's start this game. And oh, by the way, Crash Warped is my favorite Crash game. And Crash Warped is one of my favorite Crash games overall. And I personally like this one, really. And I can tell you, this is the very best Crash game I ever played. So now, guys, Crash Warped will be the discussion. And the game is also a very enjoyable one, I can tell you that. So now, guys, let's go on and do Crash Bandicoot Warped. So now, onto the story of the game. So the story of the game takes place exactly where the second game left off. And I mean, it literally takes place right after the second game left. So basically what happened is that Cortex crash lands in a palace. And Cortex, right after when he falls down, and remember, this is right after he falls down in the second game. So after the second game. And so now Cortex crash lands in a palace. So when Cortex crashes into this palace or tomb, and when he crashes into this palace or like this tomb, Cortex awakened an ancient being called Uka Uka. He has awakened this being called Uka Uka, and Uka Uka is this new villain that is introduced, and it turns out that he happens to be the brother of Aku Aku, and we're introduced to him, and Uka Uka is this ancient evil mask, and he's like this evil mask that is the new villain of the game. And Uka Uka is the brother of Aku Aku, and Uka Uka turns out that he was controlling Cortex, and that he wants to control Cortex, and that he was secretly helping Cortex, and that he was secretly leading Cortex into his direction, and that he was secretly leading Cortex into his direction. So Uka Uka turns out to be Cortex's boss. So Uka Uka turns out to be Cortex's boss, and it turns out that Uka Uka is actually the real boss of Cortex. And it turns out that Uka Uka is actually the real boss of Cortex, and now he wants to be the leader now. And he's actually the real leader. And that now Uka Uka has a plan for Cortex. And Uka Uka was not impressed with Cortex. And Cortex was working for Uka Uka. Cortex failed Uka Uka. And Uka Uka was not impressed with Cortex's failure. And it turns out that Cortex was working for Uka Uka, and so now Uka Uka wants vengeance against his brother Aku Aku and Crash and eliminate them. And Cortex and Uka Uka wants vengeance and eliminate his brother Aku Aku and Crash. And he wants to take over the world, and he wants to rule the world. So Uka Uka sends in this new villain we were introduced to, and Uka Uka introduces this new villain called Dr. Nitrous Trophy, or Dr. N Trophy. And Dr. Nitrous Trophy is this time master that controls time. And Uka Uka sends Dr. Nitrous Trophy. And he's a time master. And he controls time. And he has the power and the ability to control space and time, and so on and so forth. And overall, he can use time to his own advantage. And Uka Uka sets out his plan to rule the world. And then Aku Aku hears that and found out that his brother Uka Uka has awakened and that he has returned. And Aku Aku tells the story to Crash and Coco about Uka Uka, and that he's basically a mask like evil, but he's like the evil equivalent of him. And that Aku Aku tells Crash and Coco that they have to save the world, and it's up to Aku Aku, Crash, and Coco to save the world. So the game has this hub world, and it's awesome. It has the best hub world I ever seen. And in this game, you go through different time worlds and timelines, and they have many time worlds to go through and timelines to go through. And in this game, it has a hub world that's the best, and it's a awesome hub world, I will tell you that. And you have to travel through time, and you have to travel to these different kinds of time worlds, and they have these time levels. Like in these time levels, the levels are entertaining and fun, and you have to go to these time levels to get the crystals and gems, get the relics and color gems, and so on and so forth. It's like every other Crash game, just get the crystals and the gems and the color gems and get the relics, and it's like all the other Crash games, but better and more cool. And in this Crash game is a lot more challenging and more harder and more enjoyable and very exciting to play. And this game is a great one, and to me it's one of the best Crash games out there. Okay, get the crystals and gems and color gems and relics in this game, and you have to hit all the boxes to get the crystals and hit all the boxes to get the gems, and you have to get all the color gems by doing that, and you have to go through these time trials to get the relics, and you have to go through these time trials to get the relics. And yes, this time, in this game, you have to go through time trials to get them. In this game, and you have to hit all the boxes to collect the items in this game. You have to warp through time and get it. That's why the game is called Warped. And you have to go to these time levels and have these time trials. And in these time trials, it is to get the items that you need to complete this game. And also, you have to warp through time to get it. Hence why the game is called Warped. And you have to get to these items, and you have to get to these time levels on the game's worlds. One of the game's worlds. And the game has many worlds in it, and it is interesting there, and it is interesting. There's many stages in this game. In this game, there are many interesting stages to go to into this game, and the levels are fun and enjoyable to play. And this game has many interesting and fascinating time worlds, such as the medieval times, the dinosaurs era, the future, in the Arabian times. And the game has many interesting and fascinating time worlds to explore, such as the Middle Ages, the dinosaurs, and the Arabian times, in the future, and in the Rome, and Greece, and the caveman through the Hong Kong, and to go through time like the caveman through the Hong Kong. And that's the time worlds you go through to explore, and the time world levels are intriguing Greece or the medieval times, and the time world levels are intriguing, and the time world levels are intriguing at that, and the time levels are very interesting, and the time levels are very amazing to go to in this game as a whole. The game is very hard and challenging. The game can be challenging and very hard to play at it. The game is known for its gameplay style, and it has a very good gameplay. The game is known for its gameplay and style. It is a very good gameplay that has improved and gotten better, and it's much easier and hard this time around now. So in this game, you go through the future, and then there's the future worlds, which are great, and I like. And there's Middle Ages, and the Middle Ages levels are great and fun, and the Hong Kong levels are great, and Hong Kong racing is great. And then you go through the dinosaurs, and the dinosaur levels are great. Then there's the Arabian levels, and then there's World War II, and that's right, there's references to World War II, and where you're a World War II pilot, where you're flying your plane, shooting at other planes. And the World War II levels are great, and the time levels are fun and good to play them. And overall, they're good to play them. So you do motorcycle rides in this game, and you drive your motorcycle in this game. And you drive planes, and that's right, you drive planes. And the plane levels are interesting, and the plane levels are tough and hard, but they're very enjoyable. And you do ride motorcycles, which are really great and fun. And the motorcycle levels are very good and hard, but they're very enjoyable, and the challenge in these levels are worth it. Now there's the prehistoric levels with dinosaurs, and the one with the dinosaurs and the levels are actually great and interesting. Those are actually pretty fun and enjoyable. So now this game is Water Worlds, and the Water Worlds are great. The Water Worlds in the game are fun. I mean, the water levels are enjoyable. I think the water levels are actually pretty decent, are pretty good to play. And there's the Arabian levels. There's the Middle East. Now there's the Arabian levels in the game, and you do a lot of there's a lot of obstacles and challenge in those levels, and those levels are pretty fun. Those levels are pretty unique to play. There's a lot of obstacles and things pass by and fight, and there's a lot of jumping in that one. And now there's pyramid levels. And the pyramid levels in the game are actually fun. Pyramid levels are pretty good ones where you explore in a tomb. They're very nice. They're entertaining. They're fun. There's a lot of obstacles to pass by. The pyramid levels are very challenging. The pyramid levels are very good levels. And now there's the future worlds. The future worlds are great. The future levels in the game are great. The future levels, there's a lot to do in those. Those are really fun. The future levels are really good. The future levels are very enjoyable, and they're very nice to play. The future levels are actually kind of, I think, the most difficult. I mean, they have a lot of dangerous things to fight by. And the future levels have a lot of dangerous obstacles to fight through, but that's about it. There's a lot of enemies you have to fight by. There's a lot of enemies you have to fight through in the game, and you have to use your bazooka to shoot at them. And I do like using your bazooka in the game. But overall, the future levels they're very tough, but it's very challenging, but overall, the future levels are pretty nice. The future levels are really good. So I do think these time levels are great, and the time levels are interesting to say the least. And there's a lot of these levels, and these levels are unique, and they're very entertaining to play them, and to play them overall. So now there's the Coco levels. And the Coco levels is just riding on vehicles and riding on animals to jump through the stages, and go through obstacles to hit the boxes, and I mean all the boxes. And in the Coco levels, you have to ride on this boater vehicle and go through obstacles to hit almost many of the boxes, and you have to go through these stages to ride on a animal and to jump to hit all the boxes. And there's a level where Coco flies. The flying levels are pretty good. I like the flying levels. Now there's a level where she is flying a plane, shooting his enemies, shooting enemies in the game. I think good and decent. And when she's flying the plane, shooting at targets, the boxes, I think they're pretty good. I think Coco plane levels are pretty good. I think the Coco plane levels are pretty enjoyable to play. So that's all of the Coco levels, and they're pretty good, and that's why I think about them. And these levels are hard in its own way, and the challenging part is very worth it at the end, and the award is very worth it at the end. And these levels are very unique and enjoyable, and they can be tough and hard, but it's very good to play them. And these levels are, to me, the most enjoyable out of them, really. So the game is like a collective Able in time where you have to collect all the crystals, and you have to go through time to get all the crystals, and to go through time and to complete this game. And that's how to complete this game. In this game, you have to go through time to collect the crystals, and the game is like a collectible to get the crystals in time. And that's how you complete this game, that's how you pass this game. And that's how you pass this game, and you have to get the crystals and gems to finish the game, so you can unlock all the levels of the game. And so you can get the full, entire ending of the game. That's right, you have to get all the crystals and the gems, and yes, the crystals mostly, so you can get the full, entire ending of the game to complete. Now after you fight the boss battle, like after you beat the boss, they give you these new moves, and these new moves are interesting. So let me start with the moves. So let me go in depth what kind of moves you have to do. So first there's the supercharged body slam, and then there's the double jump and the death tornado spin and the fruit bazooka. So let me just start by saying what kind of moves these are. So first, there's the supercharged body slam. And that one, all it is just a body slam, but it's a good body slam, and I like it. All I have to do is just double jump and just do a body slam. I like it, and it's just fine. It's just a rather fine, decent move. Then there's the double jump, and all it is just a double jump. That's kind of what it is, but it's really useful, it's helpful, and I like it. But overall, that move's really helpful, and it's a pretty decent move. Then there's the death tornado spin, and I actually like this move. I like this move a lot. It's my favorite. And what you have to do is just double jump high and spin through the air and jump, and just spin in the air, just spin by jumping and just to get crossed by something. I really do like this move. It's one of my favorite moves. It's a really helpful move, and it's a very good and useful move to play. Then there's the fruit bazooka. Now, the fruit bazooka is my favorite. I do like the fruit bazooka. It's really great, and the bazooka one's pretty awesome. It's my favorite. So overall, I do like these moves. The fruit bazooka, so all it is just a bazooka that shoots fruits, and it's just to shoot your targets and to shoot buttons just to pass by and go through your obstacles. I do really like this bazooka move. I like this one. It's my favorite. It's really good. It's really useful, and it's the best one. And I really do like this bazooka weapon. It's my favorite move, move of all time. And that's what I think about it. That's my thoughts. So overall, I do like these moves. These moves are pretty fun and enjoyable, and I do like them. So what I found interesting in this game is that all the bosses in the game show their faces with cutscenes with dialogue that has lines like an intimidating insult, and they say to you threatening insults. And even the main villains do it too. And the main villains have this cutscene too, and in their cutscenes they do similar things and say similar things. Bosses of the game have like these cutscenes with lines of insults, and they give you mocking threats. That's what I found interesting in the game, and that's what I like about it, and that's what I really do like about it. So now on to the bosses of the game. So the bosses in this game are the best I've seen in a Crash game, and I do think they're the best Crash bosses I've seen. So more onto the bosses. And the bosses there are Tiny the Tiger, who returns as a boss again, and he's a pretty good boss fight, and I do like to fight him as a boss in this game. And then there's Engine, who returns as a boss again. Teen Tiger is a good boss fight, and he kind of throws all kinds of attacks at you. He kind of jumps and hops. And, I like how Teen Tiger jumps at you, and he kind of jumps around and does all kinds of attacks on you. And that's kind of why I like it. And he's just a good, challenging boss fight, and I like how he's tough and hard. And I'd like to fight him in the game. That's kind of feel. That's my thoughts on that. And then there's Engine, who returns as a boss again. And he's alright. And even though he's a bit more harder and challenging in this game, he's still a great boss fight. And I do think he's a decent boss fight. And now, one of my favorite bosses is the Dingodile boss. And Dingodile is like this mutant that's half a dingo and that's half crocodile. And he's pretty much a mutant that was combined and resorbed into a dingo and crocodile, and combined and resorted into this. And Dingodile is a very fun boss battle, and he can be a bit challenging in a few places, but you will get used to it. And he is kind of a hard boss, but still, he is a good boss fight. And he's a very fun boss fight, and you'll get used to fighting him in the game. And he's a pretty good boss fight in the game, and he's a dingo/crocodile with a flamethrower. And I do like his flamethrower. And he's pretty tough by shooting his flamethrower at you, and I do like it. I have to admit, I do like this boss. And even though he's a dingo/crocodile with a flamethrower, I do like his flamethrower. His flamethrower can can be pretty challenging, and when he shoots his flamethrower at you, it's pretty tough, and it's just my favorite boss. And I do like fighting him in the game, and he's a great tough boss fight to beat. And now there is Dr. Nitrous Trophy, Dr. N Trophy. And he's the most toughest boss fight, and he's the most strongest boss fight in the game. But he is a very enjoyable boss. And as a boss fight, he can be a pretty good boss fight. And I think he's a pretty good boss fight. And Crash defeats and destroys the others. And then Crash defeats and destroys Dr. Nitrous Trophy, Dr. N Trophy. So then Crash and Aku Aku confront the final boss of the game. And that's Cortex and Uka Uka, who is Aku Aku's evil twin Uka Uka. And then they confront Cortex and Aku Aku's evil twin Uka Uka. And then Crash and Aku Aku confront the final boss of the game, and they fight, and Crash has the final battle with Cortex, and Aku Aku fights his evil twin brother Uka Uka in the final battle. And so Crash and Cortex fight it out and attack each other, and so Aku Aku and his evil twin brother Uka Uka, they both shoot lasers at each other in their eyes, and fight out, and attack each other, and they both shoot lasers from their eyes at each other, and fight it out, and then attack each other. And so really the boss battle is very good, and it's great. And then Aku Aku and Uka Uka fly around and jump at each other, and then spin around and swirl at each other. And then Crash fights and battles Cortex, and Cortex shoots his laser beam gun at him and throw explosive bombs at Crash. So really overall, this boss fight is really good and great. And it's such a satisfying and challenging and intense and enjoyable boss fight that, it's such a sad boss fight, so that I just like it and so I enjoy it. So then Crash and Aku Aku defeats and destroys Cortex and Uka Uka. And then after that, the Time Warp was defeated and destroyed. In the Warp Time Zone, then sucked Cortex and Uka Uka in there at the time at the warp time zone, at the time warp zone, and they're now sucked into the time warp zone. And then Crash and Aku Aku escapes freely, safely, and then they went home and are safe at home. And then Crash and Aku Aku save the world again, and after they saved the world again, and the world was saved again, and after the world was saved again, and then Aku Aku tells Crash and Coco another story, and then Aku Aku tells Crash and Coco where Cortex and Uka Uka really are, and he tells them that they're gone, that they're stuck there just fine, well and dandy. And then the game then cuts to Cortex and Uka Uka, and Cortex and N Trophy are there, and they're babies, and they literally turn into babies, and because of Cortex and N Trophy, I guess because of the warp zone. Yeah, I think it's literally because of the warp zone as to why Cortex and N Trophy are kind of like this way, into this form, in a kind of way, and in the warp zone, Cortex and N Trophy in a kind of way, and Cortex and N Trophy are both pulling Uka Uka, and they're both grabbing Uka Uka like the babies that they are, and as babies, they're in the warp zone torturing Uka Uka, and boy, Uka Uka is not having a good time there. And that was the ending of the game, and then the game ends. So then Crash and Aku Aku confronts the final boss of the game, and that's Cortex and Uka Uka, who is Aku Aku's evil twin Uka Uka, and then they confront Cortex. And then Crash and Aku Aku confronts the final boss of the game, in a fight, and Crash has the final battle with Cortex, and Aku Aku fights his evil twin brother Uka Uka in the final battle. And Aku Aku fights his evil twin brother Uka Uka in the final battle. And so Crash and Cortex fight it out. And attack each other. And so Aku Aku and his evil twin brother Uka Uka, they both shoot lasers at each other in their eyes, and they fight it out. And they both shoot lasers from their eyes at each other, fight out. And so really the boss battle is very good. And it's great, and really then Aku Aku and Uka Uka, and then fly around and jump at each other, and then spin around and swirl at each other, and then Crash fights and battles Cortex, and Cortex shoots his laser beam gun at him, and throw explosive bombs at Crash. So really overall, this boss is really good and great. And it's such a satisfying, challenging, and intense, enjoyable boss fight. So Crash and Aku Aku defeats and destroys Cortex and Uka Uka. So Crash and Aku Aku defeats and destroys Cortex and Uka Uka. And then after that, and the Time Warped was defeated and destroyed. And the Time Warped was defeated and destroyed. And the Time Warp Zone then sucked Cortex and Uka Uka. And then the Time Warp Zone then sucked Cortex and Uka Uka in there at the Time Warp Zone. And they're now sucked into the Time Warp Zone. And then Crash and Aku Aku escapes freely and safely.
and then they went home, and a safe home, and then Crash and Aku Aku saved the world again. And then Crash and Aku Aku saved the world again, and after they saved the world again, then the world was saved again, and after the world was saved again, and then Aku Aku tells Crash and Coco another story, and then Aku Aku tells Crash and Coco where Cortex and Uka Uka really are, and he tells them they're gone, they're stuck, and he says that they're stuck there just fine, well, and dandy. But then the game cuts to Cortex and Uka Uka, and Cortex and Entropy are there, and they're babies. And like they literally turn into babies. And because of Cortex and Entropy are kind of like this in a way because of the Warp Zone. And in the Warp Zone, Cortex and Entropy are both pulling Uka Uka, and they're like both grabbing Uka Uka like the babies that they are. And as babies, they're in the Warp Zone torturing Uka Uka. And boy, Uka Uka is not having a good time there. And that was the end of the game. And after you complete the game, there's actually 5 more levels in the game. Like after you literally 100% completed it and passed the game, there's actually 5 more levels, and then that game turns 105%. And I say that because, like, if you kind of like, you know, get all the time trials to get more relics, that's 105% completion. I don't know why, but this game does it. But it's just kind of a bonus, and it's an interesting bonus, and I like it. And overall, it's enjoyable. I don't know why, but it's an interesting bonus, and I enjoy it. Like I think they just add in like 5 more bonus levels because I guess they want to challenge the player more and make it more hard and difficult. And these levels are fine, enjoyable. I like them. They're nice levels. And I have to do time trials to get it. And you have to get more time relics. And you have to do the best time to beat it to get the time relics in the game. But I guess they want to give more challenge to the player, make it more hard for them. And what do you think about these levels? I like these levels. Pretty enjoyable and fun. I like them pretty enjoyable and fun. But overall, I do like these levels. And that's kind of all I have to say. And that's what I think about them. And that's all I have to say about that one and front. And that's my thoughts on that.
So that was Crash Bandicoot Warped. And what do I think about it? I love this game. This game is the best Crash game I ever played. Crash Warped is one of the greatest Crash games out there. And possibly one of the best games out there. And Crash Warped is one of my favorite Crash games out there. And Crash Warped is a very improved game. Warped is very good, and Warped has improved and gotten better as a game. And it's great that the controls of the game have gotten better, and the designs of the game has gotten better, and more improved the designs and graphics. And the graphics are more improved and better. And yes, in the gameplay. And the controls has all gotten better. So those are my thoughts on Crash Warped. And so I give Crash Warped a 8 out of 10. So guys, that was Crash Bandicoot Warped. And that was my thoughts. And those are my thoughts on Crash Bandicoot Warped. So guys, I'm Retro Critic, and I'm out. And I'll see you guys later. And I'll see you guys around. And I'll see you guys next time. And so guys, I might talk about Crash Team Racing next time. And other Crash Racing games and other Crash games. And I do more racing Crash games. I might do more on other Crash games. And so guys, stay tuned for the next video. So guys, I'll see you guys around. So guys, stay tuned for the next video. And I'll see you guys in the next video. And peace out and bye.